certainly. Thank you, everyone. So really what I'm hopeful for is for this to be open, where all of us are checking our egos, our titles at the door, and we're just coming together as a group of really passionate people, caring people, trying to just find our way in this crazy world that we're in. Um, so there'll be an ample opportunity for that open dialogue. We'll open up the floor. Um, I'm a storyteller, and I'll explain what that means. I've had the benefit of 30 plus years working in a technology focused role, and I'll share some of my life stories with you in the hopes that it resonates with some of you. It's my greatest hope that after this session, it's not the last time we speak. It's my hope that if we're not connected on LinkedIn, you'll connect. It's my greatest hope that if we are connected on LinkedIn, that you'll seek time for us to get to know each other on a personal level. I find that if we get to know each other on a human level, on a personal level, there's almost always something in common. In 30 years of getting to know people, I have yet to meet a single person that I have absolutely nothing in common with. And why that's important is that common thread or threads that we have helps us to be better in the professional space, better in the leadership space, because we can relate to something, whether it's cars, whether it's pets, whether it's family, whether it's travel. Oftentimes our jobs are really quite challenging. And then, of course, when you introduce things that are outside of the realm, like a pandemic, or a financial crisis, or natural events, or social or civil unrest, that job becomes even more difficult. So I'll share some stories over time. But before I do, a little bit of background on Jack Henry. So I see some very prideful Jack Henry associates out here. Thank you all for making the time and helping to keep me straight here. Many of you have been with the company much longer than I have. So you'll note in Michael Hunter's background, there is Jack Henry and Associates, and the Jack Henry is Michael's a little prideful to be an associate at Jack Henry, and you'll understand why here in a moment. But I want to draw your attention to the word Jack Henry, all in lowercase, and Associates, all in uppercase, and it's not an accident. In fact, we have people that look at some of our press releases, and they point out that when we announce promotions, titles are lowercase, but associates is always uppercase. And there's a reason for that. 40 years ago or so, two gentlemen, Jack Henry and Jerry Hall, created the company that is now known today as Jack Henry and Associates. And it's a really wonderful story. There's a book about Jack Henry and how the company was built. And this is a man that saw a window of opportunity to help customers at a time of need. And he threw caution to the wind. He came home and told his wife that he was going to quit his well-paying job and build a company. And he and his friend Jerry Hall were gonna build this company. As I understand it, and unfortunately I never had the honor to meet Jack or Jerry because I joined after they passed on, but Jack's wife said, "Are you kidding? What are you thinking?" or something on the order of that. And Jerry's wife said, "We're behind you, honey. If it doesn't work out, we'll figure it out." And I might have messed the two conversations up, but I think everybody knows when you move away from something that you're comfortable with, when you move away from something that has worked repeatedly, consistently, it's scary because there's risk. And the last thing anybody wants to do is take on risk. The last thing someone wants to do is be embarrassed for their mistake. So therein lies my first story. 30 plus years ago, I had a very passionate love for the game of baseball. And I played it in high school. I had enough skill to where I had professional scouts looking to draft me. I had an opportunity to go to college on a scholarship. And let's be honest, if you have a choice between playing what is marketed as professional baseball and a choice of going to college, most people think it's cooler to be a professional athlete. What you don't realize is that there's a difference between being a professional baseball player in the major leagues and a professional baseball player in, say, rookie ball. In the major leagues, you're probably playing under normal circumstances in front of 30 to 40,000 people. In the minor leagues in the summer, like, so let's just say the Florida State League, you're playing in front of maybe 4 or 5 people, and they're all scouts, and it's 95 degrees and hot and unpleasant. Well, that was at the point where something I was really passionate about, something I loved, became a job, and it wasn't fun anymore. And it was aided by the fact that I ended up getting injured, and I ended up, in professional terms, releasing myself. And I came home after baseball without a clue as to what I was going to do next. And so I took a whole bunch of odd jobs just to start paying bills. And bills for me at that time was a car payment and insurance and gas and money for food and whatnot. And I didn't want anything to do with the game of baseball, something I was so passionate about, something I loved. I was really angry. I was confused. I was frustrated. I had all these emotions in me. And I went to a Little League baseball game. My little brother was there, and the umpire never showed. And they said, "Hey, Rob, we need somebody to umpire. Rob, you know about baseball. Would you umpire?" And yeah, sure, why not, right? So I go behind the backstop, and I reach into this box and pull out a mask. It's all dusty and some shin guards. I put them on, this ridiculous chest protector. They called them a balloon, and it was huge. I mean, it was probably 3 feet by 4 feet wide. And I never did this before, but it seemed really easy. And everything went great. And then all of a sudden they said, "Oh, by the way, just put this game on your schedule and we'll pay you for it." I'm like, "What do you mean I get paid for this? Well, this is neat, right?" So now my love for baseball was fueled and energized again. And this is really important. Everything went great until all of a sudden I screwed up a call in like a playoff game several weeks later. And I will tell you, I have been in some really spirited conversations with people over the years, CEOs, CFOs, line of business leaders, but there are very few people that bring the energy and passion and fire than a 7-year-old's mom when you call her boy out at home plate and you really screw up the chance that team has for the playoffs. I mean, really, there were names being thrown at me, and it wasn't, "Hey, you're fantastic. Thanks for coming out and volunteering your time." I mean, it was really ugly. And I was like, "Holy cow, this is nuts." And I realized I didn't have any knowledge or training on how to do this job. I was relying solely on instinct and desire. And so I invested in going to a professional baseball umpire academy. And here's why it was really appealing to me. So it was an academy that would teach me to umpire. It was an academy that would get me out of Chicago in the middle of winter and send me to Florida in January for 4 weeks. Now, if any of you have grown up in the Chicagoland area, you come to appreciate that winters are long, dark, gray, and cold. And so I don't want to hear any whining from you folks in Dallas that are complaining about how cold it is and that you're going to get 6 or 8 inches of snow. This is a regular event in Chicago, and it usually starts in November and goes all the way until end of April and sometimes into May. So anyway, I'll bring this all to a crescendo for you. I go to this academy and I had a great time and I learned a great deal. And they pulled me aside and said, "Hey, we want to offer you an opportunity to go to what's called PBUC, Professional Baseball Umpire Corporation. It's 2-week training. And at this point, they're really looking at you to be not a major league, but a professional umpire." And I was fortunate enough to have been awarded an opportunity to be a professional umpire. And let me tell you, that experience has taught me so much about work, about life, about how to navigate conflict, about how to learn from your mistakes. So going back to the mistake point, we all want to be successful, and a lot of times our successes are predicated on some failures. Well, there's no bigger place to fail than in front of 10, 20, 30, 40,000 people. And oh, by the way, if the game happens to be on TV, well, just introduce a couple tens of thousands more. And we would often say at times, if you really screw something up, you'll find your way onto ESPN. And in one of my last years of umpiring, one of our umpiring crews ended up on the ESPN due to what I would consider to be a flashy presentation by a manager that started taking his shoes off and his shirt off and throwing things onto the field. And of course, ESPN grabbed a hold of it because it was entertaining. But even those weird circumstances like that can teach an awful lot. Life is about sharing experience. My professional life and my personal lives are very tightly integrated, and that's by design. And so coming to a company like Jack Henry, I needed to work in an environment where my personal values were consistent with that of the company's. I think most of us have worked in a company that the company puts forth a set of values, but they feel like they're more words than they are behaviors or actions. I mean, let's be candid. Does anybody here work for a company or have worked for a company that has openly stated, we don't want to hire the very best. We don't want to pay for what the very best costs. So we'll accept the leftovers. We'll take the mediocre people. Of course, you never hear that. But I think most of us have encountered a company that says our people are our number one priority and we only hire the very best. And then there's actions or behaviors or things that take place that prompt you to think, is that really true or is it lip service? So my first example of life is what I refer to as the D train. So we've all been on the D train at one time or another in our life. And it usually starts with something that disillusions us. So everything's going well and something happens. And here's an example. Someone gets promoted, but a whole bunch of other people don't get promoted. And there's no communication around why people were promoted or why they weren't promoted. It just happens, and it happens in the background. And if it happens once, people think about it, and then they think, well, yeah, okay, it's just a one-off, and then they move on and they recover. But then it happens a second time, or something similar happens a second time. Now that disillusionment turns to energy, and then it leads to disgruntlement. So now there's energy. There's a cauldron of boiling, bubbling liquid in your belly, so to speak, and you're really wondering, is this really how the company operates? Is this really how this leader operates? Is this really how the culture is here? And oftentimes people don't do anything about it. They let it fester and fester and fester, which is really a tragic mistake, because if it continues, then it takes them off their game. It takes them out of their element. The passion that they have for their job, for their company, for their customer erodes because it's consumed by something else. Well, figure it's like a roller coaster. So when that cauldron of energy inside of you is climbing and climbing and climbing, eventually the roller coaster gets to the apex and it starts going down. And once there's enough weight and momentum to carry the roller coaster cars over the threshold, there's no holding it back. It just goes. And then now you're down to the next stop on the D train, which is disengagement. And if you're disengaged, I would submit at that point, it's almost impossible to get you re-engaged. And that will lead you to disembark. So that's the last step on the D train. You disembark, you leave, you choose to take your services elsewhere. And every time someone leaves, I want to understand the reasons. And it's my greatest hope that they'll be upfront with me and transparent and tell me what I need to know, not what they think I want to know, because I want to learn from that experience. And oftentimes they are guarded. They're not going to tell me the true source of their departure, but oftentimes they will tell me. And here's what we learn from our people. We have a great culture at Jack Henry. We have passionate people, but we're growing so rapidly, and it's really hard to maintain that mojo, that secret sauce of being a small company that is community based in a small part of the Midwest, because we're growing and expanding. And we talked a little bit before we kicked off here. We have a big presence in Dallas Fort Worth, Allen specifically, and it's very corporate in Dallas, because there's big companies there. And there's even more companies coming. When I lived in California, Toyota Motor Sales had threatened to move out of California to the small, sleepy community, which I had always known as really a farm town when I was traveling there 30 years ago. And it's Frisco now is the town, and it's big and it's exploded. And now you have Liberty Mutual there, you have Toyota there, State Farm is out there. And when companies come, so to do jobs. So it's very corporate there. Where in Monette, where we're based and founded, it's very small community based. And so as you might imagine, there's a little bit of a cultural divide that's occurring. So you have people that come to the table with different views, different philosophies. We're referring to that in today's realm as diversity. Okay, and that's really an important aspect around Agile, because the only way Agile really works in my mind is to bring diverse opinions and thoughts together. If you have all the same people with the same knowledge, or people that lack courage to say, hey, I disagree and here's why, then you're more apt to take the wrong steps forward and go down the wrong path. And if we leverage the waterfall approach, we wait till we get all the way through the path to figure out, yeah, we went down the wrong path. Let's now go back and start over. Where with an Agile thought process, any single person has the opportunity and frankly the duty to pull the andon cord, so to speak, and say, stop, we're going down the wrong path. Let's stop and revisit what's changed from the time we said we're going down this path to today. And do we still want to go down this path? So a great example of that is, you may have planned this wonderful trip to Dallas in mid-February, thinking it's going to be in the 70s there. And it's going to be a great escape. And we're going to go and we're going to tour the book depository, which everybody has to do at least once in their life if you go to Dallas. And now you've read the weather and you're seeing that they're going to get 6 to 8 inches of snow. Well, maybe you want to reconsider. Do you still want to get on the plane or get in the car and drive to Dallas, knowing that maybe the streets are going to be closed, the town's going to be shut down in preparation? So that's the first benefit of Agile, is it gives people an opportunity to stop before you reach a milestone or a completion of an effort. The other piece to it that I think is critically important is it's a different philosophy when you bring people from different groups together. So I'll give you an example. And Einstein's telling us the definition of insanity is to continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome. Well, that came to me when I moved to Houston in 2013. So I was this essentially the CIO equivalent for a company based here in Houston. And we had an IT group of 50 people or so, and we were all in what we called a fishbowl. So there was this walled off room that was all glass walled, and then everybody sat in a cube. And I had an office, but I intentionally sat in the fishbowl in a cube. And I did so with purpose, because I wanted everybody to see that when I say we're all equals here, we check egos and titles at the door, and then I walk out and go into an office and close the door, what message does that send? So I sat in the fishbowl, and I used the office for community room. So where if we needed a meeting or a huddle room, that's what we used the office for. And so one day I had an app developer, a manager, go across the other side of the room to the infrastructure and operations team and say, hey, Terry, we need an environment stood up to support the building of a new product that we're going to sell to the customers. And Terry said, okay, no problem. Give me your requirements. They gave the requirements. And Terry says, all right, I'll have that ready for you in about 6 weeks. And Nazar, who was the application manager at the time, said, Terry, I need it now. I can wait 2 weeks, but I can't wait 6 to 8 weeks. I've got commitments. Customers are expecting the first results of the sprints in literally 3 weeks. And there was the spirit of the conversation, and it led to some unproductive dialogue. And I just listened and watched. And Terry said, "Okay, well, Nazar, I'm gonna put everything on hold for you, and I'm gonna pull this rabbit out of my hat for you." And Terry did. And 2 weeks later, there was all the infrastructure ready, the environment was ready. Well, guess what happened along the way? Literally a week later, Nazar goes back to Terry and says, "Terry, I need another environment for a test for a product." And Terry says, "I just gave you one. What happened to that one?" "Yeah, it's really a test environment. We messed it up so badly, we need to rebuild it." And of course, this is back before the day that we learned about how to virtualize and automate and create containers and all that stuff, because that technology wasn't as robust as it is today. So now Terry is really angry because now it's the second time that someone is coming to him asking for an aggressive timeline, frankly, an unrealistic time frame. And now Terry has to make the choice of making someone else unhappy to make someone else happy. We've all been there. And so I just took it all in and I said, okay, this isn't working. And so I restructured the team to be product focused. So we eliminated the infrastructure manager role and we eliminated the app dev manager role, and we created product manager roles. And the product manager role was really the king or queen of the empire, so to speak. And that person had all the resources they needed to drive outcomes. That included security engineers, test engineers, app dev engineers, infrastructure engineers, and it was very foreign to them. Here they were now all, a network engineer is used to reporting to a network engineering manager. And now he or she is reporting to a product manager who is really accountable for the delivery of that product, the support of the product, the timeline of the product, the budget associated, everything. And it was really uncomfortable for us at first. But once we got our stride and once we got comfortable, it was wonderful because we were driving value and outcomes with speed and precision. And now people were starting to work together. So here's what I learned in that moment in time. And then at that time, I picked up this book called The Phoenix Project, which I think everyone has read at least once, if not twice. And it spoke to me. This is exactly the problem I'm trying to solve. So I'm here in front of you as a humble man to say, I wish I could tell you that I figured this all out on my own. I didn't. I had lots of help. I read books. I talked to people. I sought input and advice. I showed a willingness to be vulnerable. And I learned from the baseball field that when you make a mistake in front of tens of thousands of people, you better be humble and accept it. Because when it happens, and it happens big. And so I had no shame in saying to my team, to my company, to my customer, hey, this Agile concept is new to us. We're learning about it, and we're going to make some mistakes along the way, but we're going to learn and grow from it. So that's really the first part of my message and my story, and how baseball was an instrumental part of my life, how it led me to the person I am, the leader I am. At this point, if you have some questions, throw them into the chat so we can go through them.
Rob, I have a question. I'd love to just, so I'm sitting here and I'm writing because I like to write when people talk. And I'm looking at your background where, you've worked in infrastructure, you worked in compliance, which people don't think of agility, but when I hear you speak, I'm kind of moved on it's your mindset to empower people that it doesn't matter if your application, if your infrastructure, because I hear that all the time. I'm infrastructure, so I have to be waterfall. I'm this, so I have to be waterfall. We have to these guidelines. But when I hear you speak, it's more about empowering people. It's coming up with products. It's coming up with solutions, and you're not tied to a constraint. Does that make sense? I don't hear that, which I appreciate.
Yeah, no, you're hearing my message loud and clear. And look, it doesn't just happen naturally. People resist. People are anxious. People are confused. People are frustrated. Sometimes they're even angry about it. But if they commit themselves, if they're willing to be vulnerable and give it a try, I think they're going to find that strength in numbers works. Oftentimes so at Jack Henry, the group I inherited is a fantastic group. They're passionate, they're knowledgeable, they care deeply about the company, about each other, about the customers. Those are all traits you really can't teach someone. But here's was the feedback we were getting, and you have to take feedback as a gift. Whether you agree with it or disagree, someone has given you this feedback. And the feedback that I was given was that my team was disconnected from the company and the customer, meaning we were operating in a silo, we were doing our own thing, and we had to really address that. Whether we agreed with the feedback or not, we had to address it. And I would prefer to address it by going on offense versus being on defense and protecting against it. So the way we went about it is I made it a part of all of our goals and objectives, including my own, to learn the business of Jack Henry and put ourselves in front of more customers. Because if we're in front of more customers, we understand the true pain points and the value that our customers are demanding from us. And we have this approach called One Jack Henry that we're really trying to push now, which is, and think about it, we're all in the same position. What you deliver a product or service to the street, to a customer. The customer, and it doesn't work for whatever reason, the customer really has no interest or desire to understand whether it's a network infrastructure issue or an application layer issue. They simply don't care. They pay you for a product or a service, they expect it to work. And you can sit in front of them and make all these excuses all you like. But at the end of the day, I think customers appreciate honesty. I think they appreciate transparency. And here's what I've learned. Customers appreciate when I come to them with the message and say, we messed up. This is what we did. This is why it happened. This is what we've learned from it. This is what we're now doing to ensure that it does not happen again, so that you're not impacted again. And I want you to know, A, I'm aware how it impacted you. B, I want you to know I care that it impacted you. And thirdly, I want you to know we're going to make you whole somehow. And that's powerful, because it's diffused so many really challenging conversations with customers. I mean, I think we've all been in front of a customer that has threatened to take their business elsewhere because they're not getting what they feel they need from you. And I learned something really valuable recently, and it's in a book, several books actually. So you haven't fully lost a customer until they stop talking to you. So if they're still talking to you, you've got a shot, you've got a chance. You're in the game. The moment they stop talking to you is the moment you're pretty much done at that point, and you've got to accept the consequences. And so, again, being a Chicago guy, I'm pretty much used to failure. Our baseball team, one of them wins every 105 or 6 years. Dan Kruger will keep me honest. But those losses teach, and you've got to use them as teachable moments, and you've got to learn from the teachable moments, because that's the only way you get better, and it's the only way that you are able to gain trust and win. So, and you're right on the money there. I mean, my role as a leader is to bring people together and have us all focused on common goals and outcomes. And here's what I'll tell you. I would very much love to get every person in my organization. So I have a little over 800 people in my organization, and I would love to have each and every one of the 800 people subscribe to our mission, aligned and driving and rowing all in the same direction. That would be wonderful. But let's be honest, it's a little bit unrealistic. But if I can capture as many of those people as possible, then that's a win, because it's strength in numbers. And as Vince Lombardi had taught us, he told his teams that took the football field, and whether you like the Packers or not, this is a profound example of leadership. Vince Lombardi told his football teams, gentlemen, each day on Sunday, we go out in pursuit of perfection. We realize that we will likely never achieve perfection, but we will discover excellence along the way. And that is so profound because, as an umpire, I really strive for perfection. And I knew I was not going to be perfect. but I also knew that I would discover excellence along the way. And so if you are a baseball umpire working home plate and you um, are umpiring a 9 inning baseball game, and there are, let's just call it, a half a dozen pitchers between the two teams, it's not uncommon for you to see 300 or so pitches in that baseball game. And and Dan Kruger again. I sorry to keep calling Dan out, but he's one of the people I'm absolutely aware of. Has walked a mile in my shoes, so he can relate. If you get back to your locker room or your car at the end of that 9 inning baseball game, and you say, "Gosh, I wanted that pitch back in the 7th inning," you might say that once or twice. That's pretty darn good. If you miss 2 pitches out of 300, that's a pretty good track record. When you consider the guy or gal who is hitting the baseball, their baseline for excellence is hitting the ball 3 out of 10 times. Think about that. It's all perspective, right? A baseball player is largely thought as being successful if they can be successful 30% of the time. A baseball umpire is expected to be 90% or better successful.
And Rob, and this is really a question I like to ask frequently, because I think it provides different perspectives. But when you mentioned that you realize the disconnection between certain parts of your org, and you knew that it had to then be a product focused mindset. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe at that time you were at that CIO level or equivalent or so.
Yeah.
So when a a manager, a director, a VP sort of sees that same issue going on within their company, what do you recommend to them to be able to communicate to their superiors and get them on board and be a champion of some change process that they think might be helpful? Because sometimes that's intimidating for that level.
It is, Jay. So here's another thing I've learned from the baseball field, and it's translated into my professional life. As a leader, you have to show courage and you have to show commitment, and you need them both. You can't. You can only go so far with one, and you can only go so far with the other. I'll be candid with you. I've been struggling recently, and I've had some really good conversations with my wife about this. So I make an effort to meet as many people as possible and connect with them on a personal basis. And every now and again, I'll reach out to someone about a question or about something that's come up, and I genuinely want their input. I want their what we call borrowed perspective. And that's something that was part of one of our training programs years ago. You can Google modelnetics and you can come up with what borrowed perspective is. But essentially, it's intimidating to some of these people. And it's been said to me on more than one occasion, I'm nervous. What are you nervous about? Well, it's not every day I get to meet someone at your level. What do you mean? My level? Help me understand that. Well, you're the CIO of the company. I am. And, you're a facilities specialist. You have an important job for us. Well, come on. I mean, I'm responsible for cleaning the offices. You are. It's very important. And I'm not kidding. I'm serious. And I said, help me understand how we can be more efficient in that role. Your role is no more or less important than mine. We just have different roles. I mean, you look at, again, I'm probably going to open a can of worms here with Tom Brady. Whether you like him or not, you can't dispute the fact that this man has won 7 Super Bowls. And he's done so with really not necessarily what you would consider the best roster on the field. He's a leader of people. And when he speaks, people look at him and they acknowledge. So the best example that I can give you is a couple years back, the Super Bowl was hosted in Houston. It was a wonderful event for the town, for the city. Everything was great. And the Patriots were down by like 3 touchdowns at halftime. And they came out of the locker room and started the second half, and he grabbed 2 people by the jersey, both like this, and said, okay, we're going to get it together. We're going to go and we're going to win this game, and it starts right now. And no one said, Tom, come on, we're 3 touchdowns down. We've won 5 others before. We'll get it together next year. They all said, you're right. Let's go and do it now. And look what happened 30 minutes later. They won the Super Bowl. And so you've got to have commitment and you've got to have courage. And so, my role is to help nurture and create an environment where people feel that they can come forward with ideas, with their thoughts, knowing that they're bringing them forward to a diverse group of people that are coming at that challenging situation from different angles, different perspectives, different cultures, different viewpoints, and they can share openly their thoughts without fear of reprisal, retribution, fear of being laughed at, scorned, told that's ridiculous. We just don't permit that there. There's another book for you, and I'm going to clean it up, but there is a book that basically talks about never permitting what are called brilliant jerks into your environment. The book is called The No A-Hole Rule, and you can look at it, and it's a spectacular book. Basically, what it says is do not allow really smart people to be jerks in the environment because it's toxic and it erodes that environment that you're working so hard to build, but more importantly, so hard to protect. Because when the moment people stop, think back to my D-train analogy, the moment people stop engaging, they disengage, is the moment they stop talking. The moment they stop talking is the moment they now are looking to exit and disembark and go somewhere else. No different than your customer, right? When your customer stops talking is when you've lost them. When your employees stop talking, you've lost them.
Hey, Rob.
Yes.
I've got a question about your professional baseball. So I know you observed a lot of teams through the umpiring vision. What were some of the key characteristics or most prevalent characteristics you observed from the most successful teams?
Yeah, such a great question. Oftentimes, the best team on paper is seldom the one that wins. And there's usually I usually attribute it to culture and people. They don't work together, they work against one another. I will tell you, as a baseball umpire, I was never the best umpire on the field. In fact, I was probably our weakest link for more often than not. But here's what I augmented that with. I worked really hard. I mean, really hard, harder than everybody else on the field, because I had to stay there. And so when I look at how that translates to a baseball team, let's just use the Houston Astros as an example. They had to work hard because they were a good team. And this is kind of tongue-in-cheek a joke. And when hard work wasn't enough, they started cheating, right? They put a camera in center field, and we all learned about that. All kidding aside, though, when teams finally reach that ultimate threshold of becoming a champion, it's because they trust in one another. They believe in one another. They push one another. They embrace failure together, and they learn from failure together. How many times have we seen at the professional level fighting on the sidelines between players on the same team? The offense fights and claws to get the team back in the game, and the defense gives up a touchdown. And now the quarterback, the captain of the offense, goes to the linebacker who might be the captain of the defense and calls him out and screams and hollers. And of course, every camera is following this. And now it's on social media. Well, what you have there is an epic failure of leadership. As a captain, you're a leader of people. As a coach, you're a leader of people. And so that is where the culture has now been eroded. So by all means, Eric, oftentimes the teams that are ultimately the ones that are most successful, they invest and believe in leadership, in principles that govern the success of the team. And that translates into the workplace with your team, with my team. Look at the things that caused you to fail or miss your goals and objectives. And ask yourself, are they process? Are they technology? Sometimes, but more often than not, they're people-based. And it always starts with people. And I'm old fashioned. People will always buy from people. No matter how much we try to eliminate people, like even with like example, Carvana. So now you don't have to speak to a human being anymore, right? Or even see one. Everything is done online until you have a problem with the car and you need to speak to a human. Have you ever been so frustrated because you're in what's called this, you call this 1-800 number, it's a queue and push one here and you end up having to repeat yourself 2, 3, 4 times because you can never get to the right person. At some point, human to human interaction is necessary because humans have feeling and empathy and understanding for one another, where automation doesn't. It doesn't care. It just runs the script.
Yeah. Hey, Rob, we have another question from Sheila McGrath. Her question is, did it take more, less, or about the same resources to reorganize along product lines? That's the first. And were there any resource shortages for those specific specialties?
Yeah, Sheena, thank you. And Sheila, thank you for the question. So the short answer is at first, the only way to get people to fully embrace this new concept, this new structure, is you have to get them to buy into it. And the best way to get them to buy into it is not saying that you're going to find roles will be eliminated right away. Now, you might be able to eliminate some roles because you gain efficiencies, but it's, for me, it's almost always under the pretense that I'm going to harvest those roles that are now redundant and create new roles that are absent, that we know we're going to need, because in our gap assessment, we've identified them as gaps. So initially, it takes the same amount of resources. It's going to take them some time to learn from each other, to hit their stride, kind of like dancing with a new dance partner. If you've never danced with someone for the first time, you're invariably going to step on someone's toe a time or two, but then you're going to figure out how the other person moves. Along the way, really, the whole goal for me around Agile is the efficiencies that we gain and the speed. And so when we gain those efficiencies, invariably we come to a point where we have to rationalize the team structure, and we are going to have too many of this skill set and not enough of another skill set. And then you are asking, okay, since we only need 3 people that bring this skill set and we have 6, is it feasible that some of these people have the capability to do this other task that we really need to drive the outcome that we've identified at the timeline, on the timeline we've identified. And sometimes you can do that. That's a really good story, because now people are learning new things. People are growing as a result, but sometimes you don't have the time to do that because there's pressure, outside pressure from the marketplace. Your customers need you to be there within for a certain timeline. And if you're not there with that product or service, then they go somewhere else, and your time of need has been missed. You lost your opportunity. Long term, there's always resource shortages for whatever reason. People leave the company, people go on vacation, people unfortunately get sick or pass away. And so that's where you have to have a game plan. And going back to the question that Eric asked me about teams, teams that ultimately succeed are deeply connected with one another on a personal level, but they also have deep resources. So invariably, while it may not be ideal to have a tight end being your place kicker, if your first string and second string place kicker get injured, someone's got to try to kick a field goal or an extra point. And it might be the case that tight end used to be a kicker in high school and is no longer a kicker, but the fact that person is humble and willing to try it and learn, and you might be surprised. Now you might have found your next starting place kicker that's going to set records year after year. You don't know. So I think you have to be comfortable in your skin. You have to understand what your strengths are, what your limitations are.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob, for that. We have another question that was asked from Kara. When you have a chance, do you happen to know what the book is called that you had mentioned regarding the Jack Henry story?
Yeah, I want to say it's You Don't Know Jack. So I will, while we're talking, I will Google it and
That's
look.
it, Rob. It's you don't know Jack or Jerry.
Okay, thanks a lot, Eric. You know, again, the reason why I'm successful is because I'm backed up by really incredibly wonderful people. You know, so thank you for having my back there.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. Do we have any, we have another question that came in. Did you find that the team needed more encouragement and positive reinforcement during the transition to the product focus?
There's no doubt. The team I inherited was demoralized in many regards. They were tired of getting blamed. They were tired of being looked at as the reason why things were failing. They were tired of hearing that they weren't technical. They didn't do a good job. I mean, they were internalizing it. They took it personally. And you know, oftentimes the first thing I do before I start making any changes is I listen. I go on a listening tour. The second thing I do is I seek understanding. It's only until at that point when I understand that I can show empathy, and it's only at that point once I've shown empathy that I can drive change and ask them to join me in driving the change. Oftentimes we try to rush that process and we try to skip over the understanding and empathy part, thinking that, hey, I've done this before. This is I did it over at this company, so naturally it's going to work here, and you're now driving change with people that are going to resist the change, and they're going to fight and claw, and even if they don't fight and claw, they're not going to invest in the change and help you navigate and drive the change as efficiently as it could be if you had volumes of people in your organization subscribe to the change, feeling like they understand the change, agreeing with the change, seeing the value, and meaningfully participating in driving the outcomes that your team, your company needs going forward.
Rob, I have a quick question for you. So let's say you're a Scrum Master, a product owner, and you're, and I get this often. I can't tell you how often a VP or a director will come up to me and tell me they're Agile, and they really are super waterfall, but they love to, for some reason, always tell me how Agile they are because they do like stand-ups and stuff. So how would you suggest a product owner, a Scrum Master, or anybody on any team really approach a CIO or a leadership who thinks they're Agile, but they're not?
Yep.
In change? Because I get that a lot where they're leaning towards consultants, but the leadership just has not decided to change at all, but they think they have.
Yeah, great question, Anna. So first, I think we've all experienced people that believe they're agile. Some of us maybe even believe they're agile, and in reality, they're what I call wagile.
Yeah.
where they're a blend of agile and waterfall. Again, I think my advice to how do you engage a C-level leader, a VP, a senior director, whatever that role is, it starts with courage and commitment.
Ooh, nice.
So again, there's another book for you. It's written by a Navy admiral. It's called This Is Your Ship. There's actually a second book that he's written. And so you have to create a culture and an environment of openness, transparency, and collaboration. So where everybody does truly check their ego and title at the door. It's not lip service. So when you as an Agile practitioner come to me with a problem, you're coming to me as a partner, not as someone below me, or you're coming to me as a partner in the success of the company. And you're saying to me, Rob, I see this is a challenge that's holding us back. As such, I have ideas on how to address this. So that's the second key. You will be better received if you come not just to identify a problem, but also to present solutions to the problem that you've identified.
Oh, I love that.
And I learned a very valuable lesson. Yeah, I learned a very valuable lesson from a man years ago who taught me if you come into my office with a problem, you have to have it no less than 2 solutions. And if you don't have 2 solutions, then I'm going to ask you to politely the first time to go back and think about it and come back with solutions, and then let's sit down and talk about it. If you do this a second time, you are showing me you're not capable of doing anything more than telling me we have a problem. And that was very profound advice. And so I want to know that the people that are here to help me identify problems are also here to help me identify solutions, and then work on influencing skills. Don't be nervous. And look, nervous is natural, and I try to be funny sometimes. So, you know, I've had more than my share of people that I meet for the first time tell me they're nervous to meet me, and I tell them the same thing. I'm nervous to meet you too. And they ask me, why are you nervous to meet me? Well, I don't want to give you a bad impression. You know, and then I'll say, look, I'm just like you. I'll be in car line later today picking up my son from school. You know, you had your dog just barked. My cat just jumped up on the desk and interrupted my Zoom meeting. By the way, I'm not a cat. Has everybody seen that video? I think everybody has, right? Where the guy had a filter on. It was kind of funny, right? But courage, commitment, and be prepared not only to identify the problems, Anna, but identify the solutions that you think will work, why they'll work. And here's what I will say. Figure out what hill you need to die on. You can't die on every hill. So if you're going to defend a hill, make sure you are sound in mind on why you're defending that hill, and defend it at all costs. And say to me, Rob, as the leader of our group, I am prepared to die on this hill. And here's why. And, you know, you and I might disagree about it, and I might tell you, Anna, that's not a hill to die on. And you might say, yes, it is, and here's why. And we might say, let's agree to disagree for the time being. And then what I'm likely to say is, hey, let's open this up for deeper dialogue with a more diverse audience. Right now, there's just 2 of us. So then I'll say, hey, Sheena, this is what where we're at. Anna thinks this way, I think this way. What do you think? Well, I want to know what you think. Not what you think I want to hear, what you think. Well, guess what? Now you have a different opinion. And now we can start looking at that, and that's where we really can make the best informed decision for our company and our customers.
That's so true. Come with a solution is always a good approach. You mentioned something else, Rob, where you talked about courage. And one of the things that we try to share with those who come, you know, ready to be starting their transformation, is that you have to build systems that support and drive not only courageous leaders, but also courageous partners in that space, your team associates, your peers, you know, from top to bottom. The system truly has to support being courageous, and understand that, you know, showing courage is not going to always be comfortable, right? There are some uncomfortable moments when you are showing courage, and it takes you being vulnerable during that time as well. So that is some really good. I love that you said courage, because it's really a big piece of all of this, for sure.
Yeah, you know, we have something that's embedded into the fabric of the company, which is it's do the right thing. And sometimes doing the right thing is really hard, Sheena, very hard. But if you stay true to yourself and to the company and to the customer, doing the right thing, you have to do it.
You do. Well, we're coming up very close to our end time. I want to thank you, Rob, so much for taking the time to come and speak with us here today. And then for everyone who took an early lunch to join us today at the 11 o'clock hour, we are really appreciative of you and all of your support. Just a few things, recommended reading from you, Rob. You gave was the Phoenix Project, so if you haven't read that, there's a great recommendation for you to go do that. I'm sure quite a few of us have, but for those who haven't, please check it out. There was the other book, You Don't Know Jack, which talks about the story of, the Jack Henry. A few other things that you said there, Rob, was when you make a mistake, be humble, right? And own it. You have to do that. And whether you agree with the feedback or not, especially for, not just for leaders, but for anyone, you know, you have to be willing to address it. So we want to thank you all. Please feel free to reach out to myself, Jay, Anna, for any suggestions or feedbacks to our meetup. And again, everyone have a wonderful day.
Can I
Thank
just
you,
make a
everybody.
quick comment? Can I just make a quick comment?
Yeah.
Rob was a very good umpire. He actually did a professional baseball game, so don't let him fool you that he wasn't very good. Was he good in the beginning? No, he was horrible, but he became.
We need video proof. We need video proof.
Actually, he probably still has a framed photo of him officiating. I think it was in Oakland because I've seen it. So, and then number two, you're not missing anything by being in Chicago right now. 20 below.
Oh, yeah, that's cold. Oof.
Yep.
Nice to hear from you, Rob.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Rob.
You too.
Thanks,
Bye.
Rob.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.